Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the adventurous Vaughn Manor. Yes, it's another dangerous and adventure-filled, action-packed episode of the books that time forgot. Yes, the books that time forgot, where I go through all of my books, my entire book collection, 2 boxes at a time. I got plenty of books packed away that I've got to uncover and go through. Are you all ready for the excitement, Roger? Look how ready Roger is. He's thrilled to get started with this fantastic episode of the books that time forgot. What treasures will I find this time? Okay, as usual, I got 2 boxes. Let's start on the first box. And right on top of this stuff in this box, I've got another Otto Penzler big book. This is the Big Book of Espionage. A big old book full of spies and double agents. Another fantastic anthology by Otto Penzler. This has all kinds of stuff in it. There's a James Bond story in here. We got Eric Ambler, Sarah Paretsky, Jeffrey Deaver, Allan Steinhauer, Joseph Finder, all kinds of folks in this book. It's the Big Book of Espionage. Otto Penzler, man, he never steers you wrong. Always good stuff in Otto Penzler anthologies. What else do I have? I talked about this on my channel before. This is a Cosmology of Monsters by Sean Hamill. This is a pretty good book, kind of inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, but really in his own style, Sean Hamill. It's a really interesting book, actually. I recommend it. A Cosmology of Monsters by Sean Hamill. So there's that. And here we've got The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. Excellent Philip K. Dick novel. This one is the Amazon TV show cover version. I watched like an episode of that and then just for some reason never watched anymore. Probably because I never have time to watch TV. I'm always reading something. So yeah, The Man in the High Castle. What else do we have in here? I have a very beautiful copy of Susanna Clarke's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is a very beautiful, was it Bloomsbury Modern Classics, I think it is? I think that's what this is. And it's just a lovely, lovely copy of this book. Yeah, it's pretty big. It's a mammoth. And so I was toying with reading this. But of course, the Bookish Report actually gave this a bad report. The Bookish Report says this is rubbish. But you know, the Bookish Report is pretty darn hard on books, I've noticed. So maybe I'll read this at some point. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Is the Bookish Report right? Is this rubbish? Let me know. Also, we've got the Robert Fitzgerald translation of the Odyssey of Homer. The Robert Fitzgerald translation of the Odyssey. See, I just packed all this stuff away real quick and nothing goes together as usual. Just total randomness in these boxes. All right, what else do I have? I have the complete stories of Kafka. The complete stories of Kafka. Look at that. That look cool? Of course, this is amazing. It's Kafka. It's amazing. It's the complete stories. How awesome is that? It's very awesome to answer that question. What else do we have in here? I've got a cheapo Barnes & Noble edition of Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. Don't really need it because I've got it down here, but I do have a cheapo edition of Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad, which I'll probably hang on to until I get another edition of Lord Jim. I should get a Penguin of this, is what I should do, so I can talk about it on the Sunday Penguin. So I don't think I have a Penguin of this. I just have the cheapo Barnes & Noble. Next, what do I have? I have Sky Giants Over Japan. A diary of a B-29 combat crew in World War II by Chester Marshall. Here's Chester Marshall right there. He piloted a whole bunch of missions over Japan in a B-29. I don't know how many missions he was in, but he was in quite a few. And he writes about it in this here book, Sky Giants over Japan. Next, what do we have? Oh, this is what I was hoping to find. I did not put this in my fantasy books to read in 2022 and beyond video because I forgot and because I didn't know where I had them. Now I found them. This is Elric. I have the whole Elric series in the Del Rey edition of Elric. There's Elric right there, Stealer of Souls. This guy, badass fantasy character, Elric, a classic series of fantasy books by Michael Moorcock. Now, he did not write these stories in order of Elric's life. And unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're into it, this series is presented in the order that they were written. So in this very first book, you have the novel Stormbringer, which brings the Elric saga to a sense-shattering conclusion. And then you've got 5 more volumes after this one. After you read this book, you're like, okay, I know how everything ends. But sure, I'll read more books. It's an interesting way to present this series. That is for sure. This is Elric, Stealer of Souls. So, there you go. Elric, the first volume that I'm going to be reading sometime in the next year or two. I'm going to start that because I really want to read Elric again. It's been a long time. Haven't read Elric, I don't think, since the 90s. This is the second volume in that series. Elric to Rescue Tanalorn. This is the second book, right? Do I have these in the correct order? Yeah, it looks like I do. So this is the second book, To Rescue Tanalorn. There is a new 2-volume set of this coming out in hardcover. I believe it's a 2 or 3 volume set. I don't know which. Here is The Sleeping Sorceress, Volume 3 of Elric. There's a newer edition of Elric out now in paperback that you can get that actually has everything in order, but it's not as pretty as this one. This is the prettiest set of Elric you're going to find. Here we got Duke Elric. This is Volume 4 in the Del Rey. Look at that. That's a sweet cover, isn't it? Justin Sweet. Excellent fantasy illustrator, Justin Sweet. Does great covers and great interior illustrations on some of his books. So there's that one. And here we go. Elric in the Dream Realms. Look at that. Look at Elric. So cool. This is such a cool series. This is Volume 5 of Elric. And the conclusion, which isn't really the conclusion, is Elric Swords and Roses. Swords and Roses with Elric there looking all crazy. Pretty cool. Okay, so now I know where these are, and I will be able to read them. That is exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And next, what do we have next? We have Martha Wells' Artificial Condition. Is this the second? I think this is the second Murderbot, right? I read this one. I'm pretty sure. The Artificial Condition, the second Murderbot book. I did a video on the first 2 Murderbot books way back in the day when my channel first started. All those months ago. Nobody watched it. Like a lot of my earlier videos. But if you're interested in this, check it out. Murderbot. I haven't continued the series though, and I should, because a lot of these are short. Oh wait, I can't, because I don't have any more. I'm in this can't buy books until you read 100 books thing. I should have bought more of these before. Then I would have some short books to read so I can get through the 100 books and I can buy more books. Oh well. Artificial Condition. What else do I have in here? I have got The Moon Pool by A. Merritt that I got on clearance for $2 at Half Price Books. This book is worth a lot more than $2. The Moon Pool by A. Merritt. Excellent old-timey fantasy, science fiction-y type of thing by A. Merritt. He did He did a lot of those fantasy, science fiction-y type of stories back in the olden days. And here, quite randomly, I have the second novel in the Witcher series. This is The Time of Contempt. I've only read the first 2 story collections. I haven't read the novels yet. And so I think I've actually got the first novel out because I was going to read that and then forgot about it entirely. I should probably I should add these 2 on the fantasy that I'm going to read. I just don't know when I'm going to get to them. But yeah, The Witcher, Volume 2, A Time of Contempt. It's now on Netflix. Look, it's now on Netflix. As if you didn't know. Now I've got Tarzan of the Jungle, a Lord of the Jungle. Yeah, it's Lord of the Jungle. You just can't tell because this cover is all torn up. This is an old-timey hardcover of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. It's really cool. Look, and on the back it has advertisements for all these cool Zane Grey books you can get. Yes, Zane Grey on the back of Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. You have a little map in here for Tarzan's imaginary Africa there. It's pretty cool, this volume. Look, there's Tarzan like surfing on top of his elephant with his spear. He's having a great time on this cover. Tarzan. So yeah, there's Tarzan. Hey, look, it's more Tarzan. It's a pretty cool hardcover of Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. Dust jacket has long since bitten the dust. On this one, this one's pretty old. It feels like a wartime copy, actually, of Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. Next, what do we have? We have Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. This is the book that made his name, Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. Genes are selfish. What can you say? And of course, in this book is where he creates the word meme. Yes, all those pictures of the cat at the dinner table on your Facebook feed, all his fault and all the fault of this book. Who knew that this book would lead to such tragedy as the various awful memes that are scattered across the internet nowadays? He meant something different by a meme. But yeah, Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. It's a great book. You should check that book out if you haven't read it. Very influential book. Okay, what else do I have in this box? I've got Christopher Rocchio's The Lesser Devil. This is part of the Sun Eater series, sort of. It's kind of an offshoot of that series. This one was not published by the publisher, which was, I think, is Daw. Is Daw the one that publishes the Sun Eater? I can't remember, but this is independently published. It's been published in a different edition since then, but this was independently published. A little short novel by Christopher Rocchio, The Lesser Devil. It's pretty good, actually. It's a pretty good book. It's a pretty good tiny book. What else do I have in here? I have the complete John Silence by Algernon Blackwood, edited by S.T. Joshi. So the complete John Silence right here. Awesome. Great stories from Algernon Blackwood. I've got Deathbird Stories by Harlan Ellison. This is one of Harlan Ellison's best books, Deathbird Stories. I have got a fantastic one-volume edition of Time and the Gods by Lord Dunzani. This is wonderful, a wonderful book. And I have the direct sequel to The Three Musketeers. Yes, it is 20 years after. We get a 40-year-old D'Artagnan in here. What happened to all our musketeers? You find out in this book, 20 years after, by Alexander Dumas. Alexander Dumas. Good stuff. Here's Martha Wells, All Systems Red. This is the first Murderbot book. It's pretty cool. It's the first Murderbot book. And we have The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which I did a video on from Sunday Penguin. This is a book that actually the Bookish Report said was rubbish. He DNF'd it. Rubbish! That's what the Bookish Report said. Here is Captain's Courageous. It's a cool old Bantam Pathfinder edition of Captain's Courageous by Rudyard Kipling. That's cool. And to polish off this big box, we've got The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris. This left a pretty big impression on me when I read it. I don't know how accurate it is scientifically anymore, but it left a pretty big impression on me when I read it. So this box took like 15 minutes. Let's see how long the next box takes. All right, let's get right into that second box. Are you ready, Roger? Always so enthusiastic, my friend, who is filled with holiday cheer. Okay, the second box. Let's see what's in this big old box here. We have got Dead House Gates by Steven Erickson. I like this book an awful lot. Talked about this one a while back a little bit. Second book in the Malazan series. Going to be reading the third one sometime this upcoming year. And the fourth one, I hope. And this book is amazing. This is Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. I love this book. I love it. I think it's just a fantastic science fiction novel. A lot of people agree with me. Left Hand of Darkness. This next one is interesting. This is Before Adam by Jack London. It's his story about prehistoric humans. Cavemen, basically. And this came out from Star Rover House, which was a tiny little imprint in Oakland, California. It's a cool little book. A cool little edition of Before Adam by Star Rover House. That was pretty cool to find. Next, we've got a Bantam classic of Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. Just these Bantam classics, they're always cool. They're always awesome to have around. Ooh, what do we have here? Looks like we've got a few Kane books. I talked about him in yesterday's video. I'm going to be reading these books coming up. These are the Kane novels and short stories. This is actually a collection of short stories by Karl Edward Wagner featuring his dastardly villainous hero, anti-hero, whatever he is, Kane. So that's a pretty good old copy of that. Death Angel's Shadow. This is a novel of Kane. This is the second Kane novel. Darkness Weaves. Another great Frazetta cover. He did some great covers for these old Kane books by Karl Edward Wagner. So that one's cool. And this is another awesome cover. Night Winds by Karl Edward Wagner. Another in the Kane saga. Another great Frank Frazetta cover. Awesome stuff. These are just awesome old paperbacks. So I definitely am looking forward to reading all of the Kane books. I have got The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. No reason for me to have this. I have Edgar Allan Poe all over the place, but you know, I've pretty much given up on deciding which books I'm going to get rid of. I'm just going to keep them all like some insane hoarding madman. Yeah, pretty much. But this is The Telltale Heart and Other Writings. Just, it has all the stories you expect to be in here from Edgar Allan Poe. So it's an excellent little volume. Another Bantam classic there. And this one is a beat-up old, tore-up old penguin. This is my beat-up old copy of East of Eden by John Steinbeck. If it's not his best novel, it's probably his second best novel. This and Grapes of Wrath, they're kind of neck and neck. It's an excellent book, and this is beat up, this copy. I have this in the Library of America, but this is the only individual copy I have of it. I don't think I have anything better than this. That's okay, because I like it. I like that beat-up old book. Oh, look at this. It's Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erickson. This is the first book in the Book of the Fallen. The first Malazan Book of the Fallen book by Steven Erickson. Gardens of the Moon. Fantastic book. I really liked it. I liked it more even than Dead House Gates, even though Dead House Gates was probably the better book. I really enjoyed this a lot. The Wolfman by Nicholas Piccaro. The Wolfman, I recommended this book before. This was recommended to me from the channel Books of Blood. That is an amazing channel. If you haven't watched Books of Blood, you should, because it's like nothing else on BookTube. This guy only reads horror genre Books of Blood, and he's just like a horror genius. You should watch his channel. I found this on his 5 best novels of werewolves, about werewolves video, which was fantastic. That's the first video I saw of him. And this was an incredible book. Nicholas Piccaro, unfortunately, killed in the line of duty. He was a police officer, a volunteer police officer. And unfortunately, he was killed in the line of duty. So we never got a sequel to The Wolfman. But this is an awful good book. What else do we have? Charles Dickens, David Copperfield. This, I think, out of the novels I've read, this is my favorite Charles Dickens novel. I think it's probably his best novel. A lot of people say it's something else. But I think this is his best, in my opinion. We also have in here Ghost Stories of E.F. Benson. Ghost Stories by E.F. Benson. This guy wrote some fantastic ghost stories, and this has a ton of ghost stories in there from E.F. Benson. Fantastic book. It's awesome. You should read that book if you ever find it. Randomly, everything's random in here. I've got Night's Shadow, the second in the Greatcoats series by Sebastian de Castell. Excellent book. I still have to read the third book in this series, but I enjoyed the first 2 books quite a bit. Again, another series I forgot to put on my fantasy to read list, although I should read those books. Next, we've got some more exciting big books from Otto Penzler. This is the Big Book of Jack the Ripper, the most complete compendium of Ripper stories ever assembled. Yeah, it's the Big Book of Jack the Ripper. If you want to read about Jack the Ripper, man, there's a lot of stuff in here about Jack the Ripper from Mr. Penzler. What else do we have in here? This one's a really good one. This is the Big Book of Ghost Stories by Otto Penzler. You can't beat Otto Penzler, man, and his big books. And this is the Big Book of Ghost Stories. It's gigantic. It'll take you forever to read, but it's awesome. That was great. Another Penzler. We're getting a lot of Penzler this episode. This is the Big Book of Real Murders. Stories that inspired great crime films. And it is exactly that. It's all those old-timey crime movies that you might have watched. They're in here. The original versions of those films. This is excellent stuff by Penzler. Man, he's good. And in here I have the very first Otto Penzler big book that was published. The very first one. It's a little beat up because of it. This is the Big Book of Pulps. The Big Book of Pulps. And this is just gigantic. This is one of his bigger big books. The Big Books of... The Black Lizard, excuse me. The Black Lizard Big Book of Pulps. Otto Penzler's first big book. I should just read all of his big books in a row and see how long it takes. It'll probably take literally forever. I'm not doing that this year. But it's something to think about for the future. It's good stuff. Okay, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I think I've got a book track video coming up tomorrow because I've been lagging on that for like 2 months. So catch me then. I will see you next time here at the dangerous Vaughn Manor. Bye, guys.